Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of All Access. I've been away for some time. I did a big whirlwind tour of various continents, and I'm back. I'm very happy to be back, even though my AV system isn't fully working. I think it's working just enough so that I can kind of record this. I hope you've been well. There's a lot of exciting developments on the Avalanche front, as there always is, and there's a lot of developments on the sort of the coin regulatory side, et cetera, that I'm super happy to go into. But let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about one of the most important things in the space, which are the developments that are happening on the Avalanche side. One of the biggest announcements that came out last week was the collaboration between TSM and the plans that TSM has to develop applications on Avalanche, specifically to bring its own huge user base to the Avalanche ecosystem, to Avalanche subnets. So on this front, there is a lot of excitement. This is an announcement that was, I don't know how long in the making, almost a year in the making, with 30 million users. TSM is one of the behemoths in the gaming space. So these people watch games, they track each other's progress. There's a vibrant TSM ecosystem. And I'm not much of a gamer, so I didn't understand or appreciate just how big this was, but it's huge. So anybody who's into any of these computer games knows incredibly well what TSM is, and so they are a huge player in the esports space, and we're now partnering with them as an ecosystem. So TSM will launch a subnet to bring their gaming app called Blitz on chain. So they will have their own branded tournaments on the Blitz subnet. They will use AVAX as their gas token. They will burn AVAX with each transaction. And in the early days, these gamers will be using Avalanche without even realizing that they're using Avalanche. That's our goal. So we want people to get onto this universe, do whatever they normally do, buy skins, buy weapons, interact with each other, vote on things, etc., cheer for each other, send gifts to each other, etc., buy things using AVAX, etc. All of that will happen seamlessly. And then, of course, slowly but surely, there is, if you think about sort of the Markov chain of where people end up, right? There are different states. So people who start out as pure gamers or doing pure game things will find themselves clicking on enough Avalanche links that over time that they will tend to become users of the rest of our applications. So I'm really excited about this. For us as an ecosystem, this means a lot and brings a lot of new kinds of users. And it brings a demand that for chain space that is intransigent. It's just there all the time. It's independent of what happens in the bull market, bear market, etc. So it's decoupled from DeFi, decoupled from all the other activity on chain. It's got its own demand curve. I'm super thrilled and psyched about what TSM is about to bring to us. So that's one. Number two, core. So there's lots and lots of developments on the core side. There is every 2 weeks, I think that's at least the goal at Avalanche Labs, is to issue another version every 2 weeks on a very tight cycle. There's constantly new features being rolled out. One of the features that I'm super excited about, solely because I find it so hard to figure out what's happening in our ecosystem, is the Discover feature. This is the feature by which we get to find out about all the new projects in the Avalanche space. The chain is big. Lots and lots of things are happening. And even without stuffing the numbers like our competitors do, even without fluffing up anything, there is so much stuff that it's barely possible to keep abreast of what's going on. And Discover is here to pop to the front the exciting apps, the exciting new dApps, new games, new subnets, new whatever that is launched on Avalanche. So the takeaway items here are twofold. If you're not using Core, you should be using Core. It's really nice. I'm not saying it's the most finished product. I'm sure if you look in some corners, etc., there are small issues. Like I see the bug reports, etc. So there's like some, whatever. There's some, occasionally there's performance issues. Occasionally there's like, refresh, etc. But in general, this thing works well, and it works better than every other wallet out there. So go check it out, become an early user, try this thing out. It's really much better. There's a universe out there that is far better than what MetaMask gives you. In general, there is a lot of discourse out there, and if you listen to it, it'll just drag you out into some sad territory. You will think that, you might think that all of these chains are sort of comparable to each other. You will think that stuff that matters does not matter. You will think, they'll tell you all sorts of stuff. They'll take you to an abysmal, sad place and let you be a sad person along with whoever's the sad person who's incapable of making the world better. They try to convince you that it can't be better. So the entire value proposition of Avalanche is to make the blockchain promise real, to bring science into the equation, to actually bring capable people who know what they're doing into the ecosystem, so that we actually have better tools, so that we actually have new consensus protocols, not just the same crap rehashed after a huge amount of noise on the internet, but actually brand new protocols. So as well as actually brand new exchanges that are trustworthy, like Enclave, and actually new wallets that actually provide a different experience. So Core is here, definitely worth checking out. So if you're using any kind of a wallet, which you should be, then use Core. It supports Ethereum. It supports every other EVM chain. It also supports Bitcoin. And if you want to, I was just talking to some Bitcoin. I was giving a talk recently in Baltimore, and there were some Bitcoin maxis in the audience, and so the odd thing, or the interesting thing, was that most of their Bitcoin was actually on Avalanche, and I was thrilled to hear this. So again, I was in Baltimore, was talking to the CTO of a very large corporation that all of you have heard about, and he was saying, look, we do all of our development on Avalanche. It's reliable, it works, it's fast. So that's the true measure of speed. Right? There are chains out there who will lie to you. They'll give you TPSs and so on and so forth. But there is the one metric. I mean, we talked about metrics. I'm not going to get into that discussion again. But there is one undeniable metric. Where do savvy people go? That's the metric. So if you can't remember all the other ones, if you can't remember time to finality, etc., just look at where savvy people go. Not the ones that make noise on the internet, not the paid influencers on the internet, but the actual savvy people who are building things. So what does Coinbase do with its new hires, for example? Ask them, what system do they use to program? What do large companies in the space? This wasn't the company I was referring to a second ago. What do other large companies do? So just check it out. Hear what they say. In any case, so number one, you should use Core. If you are also a project on Avalanche, then you should be in Discover. And it's very, very straightforward. You should be able to go to a GitHub page and submit the blurb for your project to be featured on Core. Just go through that process, and that whole Discover page should reflect the reality and the excitement of everything that's happening on chain. Okay, so Discover is a treasure trove for all things Avalanche. That's exactly right. Akash is right on. And there's a whole bunch of sections: Discover Home, Core Education, Projects, Events, and News. This thing is really, really good. So go take a look. It's a great way to keep abreast of everything that's happening on Avalanche if you can't catch all these podcasts and so forth. Next up, Core is on iOS. So many of you are now using iOS, and it's and Core works there. It's just recently released. So when iOS, well, it's now on iOS. Go check it out. It's the same experience that you're used to from the Android side. If you have looked at that, it's just in the palm of your fingertips. You can do instant payments. You can do instant anything you want on chain. This thing is beautiful. So, okay, so let's see. Final announcement. This is a personal announcement. I got tapped to serve on the technical advisory board for the CFTC. So CFTC is the regulatory body for all commodities trading in the US. It is a very, very important federal agency. It and the SEC are the two regulatory bodies that are most relevant to assets on chains in general. And it's wonderful to be tapped there. I'm not the only blockchain person. I think I'm one of three. And it's a fantastic step from the commissioner of the CFTC to include members of the community, members of the cryptocurrency space in its technical advisory board. They can see the coming tide. It's so clear. Every asset will be digitized. The CFTC is doing exactly the right thing. And they're trying to seek input. They're trying to integrate what we have to say. And in turn, we have, like the three of us who represent the space to the CFTC, we have an important burden. We need to do our best to push the space forward. We need to do our best to implement best practices at CFTC, to inform them of all the exciting technical things that change the field. And in general, to push the cause forward. I will be obviously non-denominational on this board. I'm a scientist first and foremost. That's what I was, essentially at birth almost. If you consider birth to be graduation from school at the beginning of my career. So I still am. I am that way and over and above everything else. So I will do my best to provide good advice to the CFTC. Overall, if I look at the landscape, I do see a pattern, and I want to share this with you. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So there are a number of people in the universe, right? So and the future is not evenly distributed, right? It's sort of a curve. Some people live on the cutting edge. Some people trail along, right? You have these friends that you always have to clue in. You probably have some friends that come back a decade behind, so they're fighting the battles from a decade ago that we already fought and moved on from, so you probably have a Bitcoin maxi buddy who's probably proselytizing to you that you should eat only meat or whatnot. These are 5 years ago people. And then you've got the 7 years ago people, you've got the 3 years ago people, etc. There's a distribution. If I look around, there's a whole bunch of people who are not at the cutting edge. We have some people going around who are essentially Bitcoin maxis, right? So who are like, oh, Bitcoin is the only decentralized coin, and everything else is a scam of some kind. And maybe they use the word scam, maybe they use the only other word they know, depending on, they might just use the word security and try to ban everything else, all other activity related to chains. So this is it's just your typical Bitcoin maxi, right? So if you sort of took on too much and you're dragging along from 5 years ago, that's sort of what a lot of people said 5 to 7 years ago. That was a dominant piece of our discourse. But these people have not seen what happens on these chains. They have not seen what actually takes place. They haven't seen the use cases. They haven't seen the advances. And so there they are, making noise from a bygone era. And at the same time, we also have some other people who are saying all sorts of things about, all cryptocurrencies are this and that. They should be banned. We should not bail out. Crypto caused the banking crash. We just heard this from various senators and so forth. So these are people who are, insider trading on the daily on the side, and then giving us the no coiner view. So we've got these Bitcoin maxis, we've got the no coiners. This is essentially a different set of boomers dragging along from 5 to 4, I would say 6 to 4 years ago. And so those are people of the past. It is incumbent on us to educate these people. The world has changed. It really has. It isn't just scams. It never really was just scams, but there was a time when there weren't that many use cases. There was only Bitcoin, and there were people using it on Silk Road. I remember those early days very, very well. And if you took a snapshot back then and you froze in time and you're unable to process new information, I understand. I mean, it's okay. It's now time to re-up that image. It's time to catch up. It's time to learn more. It's time to understand what's happening in the space. A couple of years ago, layer twos, like that would have been the vision. It's like that layer twos is the way to scale up. Okay, well, maybe that. And there's a whole bunch of these people, right? So give me a person, I'll tell you exactly where they froze. I don't know that I'm at the cutting edge. I talk to people who educate me on new stuff. I work on a daily basis to try to stay at that cutting edge. This is the plight of a college professor, to try to always be current. And I see very easily when I meet new people just exactly how up to date they are. And it's a little bit sad that that a lot of people in DC had their opinions formed for them many years ago, and they have not been able to integrate new information. So in many ways, my job in not only on this board but in general in DC will be to educate our lawmakers, our regulators on all of the exciting things that are happening in the crypto space. Are there scams in crypto? Of course there are. Is there fraud in crypto? Of course there is. Are there bad things that happen? Yes, definitely. How do we approach them? We don't approach them with a giant ban hammer and just smash wildly around. That would just be, what would that be? We'd be tools. We'd be trying to protect the incumbents, the rent collectors. Instead, we have to bring in new technology. The SEC has to be able to tell apart stable coins of the Terra Luna variety from stable coins of the Tether variety, from stable coins of the Circle variety. Very different things. And likewise, give me any asset class, and I can easily come up with what we should be doing. And it is not the idiotic approach that you take to the porcelain shop with a hammer. It's the approach that you take as a scientist, as a well-reasoned person, as somebody who wants to see innovation within the confines of the United States, as somebody who wants to see it not flee our shores. So that's the approach that we need, and I hope that I can bring some of that to Washington. Okay, and then this is a great development. The numbers protocols. I've never been able to go to South by Southwest. I've never been down there, but I've always watched from afar. Always thought, I wonder, someday I'll make my calendar work and I'll be able to attend South by Southwest. But this year there was a winning protocol or winning project in the Web3 category called Numbers, the Numbers protocol, and the Numbers protocol is two women, headed by two women who are shown in this picture, and they came first in the Metaverse and Web3 category, and I cannot wait to see their protocol launch on Avalanche. So it's a protocol that I've had a little bit of contact with, and I've followed them a little bit. A fantastic project. Check them out if you haven't already, and see what they're doing. And I cannot wait to see this thing launch and tick along on top of Avalanche. Final note, the summit is coming up. So between May 3rd and May 5th, inclusive, we're going to be in Barcelona for the second time. Everybody who went there last year enjoyed it, came back saying this was the best conference ever. And I know I might be biased, so I want to just sort of temper what I say, but by gosh, it is by far the best conference that I've ever been to. I've been to gazillions of conferences since the dawn of time, it seems, since the 90s. So compared to any academic conference, compared to any coin event, this thing, at least last year, was far and above. And what made it so awesome was the quality of the people who showed up. It wasn't a VC fest. It wasn't a money grab at all. It was just a bunch of sweet people who were really excited about what's being built or building it themselves. And the venue is structured incredibly well. It's run by people who know what they're doing, as you might imagine, because that's sort of the kind of thing that we do. And it was just absolutely fantastic last year. I'm hoping that with your participation, we'll make it just as fantastic this year. So come by, let's go. Let's have some fun in Barcelona. It's a wonderful city at any time. Last year, one of the problems last year was the weather was still nice, but it was in the sort of high 50s, low 60s. I think this year is going to be even better in May, and I can't wait to go down to Spain and have some jamón ibérico, have like a glass of wine, and just have a great time overall. Have some sangria maybe, and just have a great time in Spain with the one of I think what I think is the most vibrant community in the crypto space, the community that never ever dangles hope in front of its users, in front of its participants, the community that has delivery at its core, the community that has the best of science incorporated into the things that it's using and building. So really excited about what's happening here. Can't wait to go, and I'm excited. Please block it out. So May 3rd to May 5th, once again, come by. We'll have a blast. And the speaker list is already amazing looking. And I just can't wait to be there. All right. So with that, let's take some questions. Where are we? Here we go. So let's take a look at what was your favorite part of grad school? Was it the thrill of solving problems no one solved before? Yes, I thought every part of grad school was awesome. So learning about stuff that's already been established was great, right? It's like there's this book, if you will. It's a virtual book. It's not a singular book. It's just a whole bunch of papers that people have written. They're just cutting edge papers, many of which come out even as we speak. And part of what you do in grad school is figure out what people did in this loosely bound, loosely and virtually associated book. They build on each other, and there's this virtual collection of work that together embodies the best of what we know. So learning that was great. The second part that comes after that is being given a problem that no one knows the answer to, and then finding a solution to it. And maybe in between, I actually like the in-between part just as much, which is finding a worthy problem is incredibly important. And so I can wax poetic on this topic for a long time. But really finding a problem is far more important in this line of work than many others. So there are spaces where you could just make up your own problem and solve it, right? So so especially in computer networking, you can just pick something, or in other fields, the higher level fields, in AI, in graphics, computer graphics, you can pick something that nobody is doing and then solve that problem, and maybe other people will hit it at some point, and then your work will be useful. So computer systems tends not to be like that. It tends to be one of these fields where at any one time there are just a couple of open problems that everybody is interested in. So it's kind of like if you read Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman by Richard Feynman. He describes physics, and physics is a similar field. At any one time, there are a small number of really big burning problems in physics and a bunch of smaller issues. So one of the things you're supposed to learn in grad school is picking the problems that matter, picking the problems that other people are interested in, picking the problems that other people will definitely run into, as opposed to making up your own problems or finding an esoteric problem that someone may or may not care about. So for example, I mean, just to give you an example of things that may or may not matter, there are a bunch of colleagues of mine who work in distributed systems who work on leader election, and there are some, there's a whole bunch of complicated theory on how to elect a leader when you can only talk to the person to your left or the person to your right, and nobody has a unique identifier, etc., etc. None of this makes any sense. If you're talking to somebody over Ethernet, he has a unique identifier, you have a unique identifier. If you're talking to someone over the internet, you can talk to anyone. You're not limited to talking in a ring, etc. So there are a bunch of problems that are interesting theoretically, but have no practical application. But then there are problems that really matter. So scaling blockchains, for example, that's a problem, right? And it's not a problem that you can punt to layer 2, because then the layer 2s won't scale. Then you'll need a layer 3, and then you'll need a layer 4, and suddenly you realize that it's layers all the way down, and there's no vision really at the bottom of it all. It just kind of collapses into an infinity mirror. So it's one of the things that I learned. One of the things that I spent the most time on was picking the problems that matter. The last one that was mentioned in the question, solving the problem that nobody knows the answer to. That's, of course, supremely satisfying, really, really fun to do. You don't get to do that much of it in grad school, right? You only get to write, if you're lucky, I think I wrote about 10 papers or so, maybe a dozen papers in grad school, which is considered a lot. Many people just write one in many fields. Just one paper is sufficient. And so in my field, we tend to write a bit more. So somewhere in between. So you don't get to do that often. It's very, very satisfying, and it's a lengthy process. But those three things: learning the body of knowledge that we possess as human beings in that one area and becoming an expert on that knowledge, and then being able to formulate and pick out the interesting, important problems and leave behind for other people perhaps, or for nobody in particular, all of the problems that don't matter. Those are really two incredibly important skills. And then the third one, that's sort of, it's obviously the holy grail, which is the ability to take a problem and use your different toolkit of techniques, math, what have you, system building, architecture skills, etc., to come up with solutions to problems that nobody knows the answer to. That the third one is of course very satisfying as well. So that combination kept me in grad school, and after grad school I decided to stay in academia and do more of it. And of course I did it repeatedly with many graduate students. So that was really fun. I highly suggest it to anybody who's burning to go to grad school. So I get this question a lot too. Should I go to grad school? If you're asking the question, the answer is no. So you would not expect this answer from me, but this is my genuine answer. The opportunity cost is so high, the things you're leaving behind by going to grad school, that you really need to be driven. And if that drive is there, then you don't have the question in the first place. So I knew I had to go to grad school. I wanted to learn more, and I was dying to find out everything there's to find out about building systems. So if you have the drive, then it's just going to be obvious. And if you don't have it, then don't go to grad school. Industry still has a huge number of exciting problems to solve as well. Okay, so what else is going on? How could we prevent hacks from happening on DeFi? Could we implement an auditing reward system on chain? Okay, this is a great question. How can we prevent hacks from taking place in the first place? Well, we obviously don't want hacks to happen. Let's start with some basics. It's terrible for the ecosystem. It wears people out. People lose their savings, etc. It ends up giving valuable assets to bad players. There are rumors that North Korean hackers are funding their whatever they're doing by stealing coins on the internet. So what can we do? Well, there's a crap ton of things that we could do. Let's try to make a list. The very first thing we ought to be doing is making sure that the teams that are building these protocols subject them to scrutiny. So don't allow people to just what was the phrase that the guy who disappeared? I knew he was going to disappear. I forget his name now. The guy who what does he do? He tests in production. That's what it is. Yeah, you don't want to go buy into coins where the main guy, there's one singular main guy. There's no staying power. You know he's going to disappear as soon as the bear market hits. And guess what happened? There was all this noise in my Twitter feed, and the entirety of those communities disappeared. I could have told you that this was going to happen. It was so clear. Maybe I did tell you. Maybe we did mention this on the podcast. Anyway, so don't let people test in production. Make sure that they employ good techniques for writing code. What does that mean? That means using decent languages for development. That means testing extensively. That means getting audits. Those are just the bare minimums of what you need to do. Moving forward from that, we need to employ better techniques for finding bugs. Humans are only so good. I have some anecdotes on this front. When we were getting the Avalanche code base tested, audited, we did something that nobody else ever did before, that at least in the crypto space, as far as I know. Before we went to our auditors, we actually embedded bugs in our code. And I embedded some of them with our lead engineer. And they are incredibly complex. I mean, some of them, we embedded 5 bugs. A few of them, 2 of them, were incredibly subtle. And then, of course, one of them was very easy, et cetera, et cetera. And I expected the auditors to find maybe 1 out of 5. And the reason why we did this is we wanted to understand just how good the audits were. Will they be able to find this kind of bug that I can see it happening? If I had, if instead of using a less than, greater, less than equals, I use a less than sign in this one loop, right? That kind of bug is very, very subtle. And to my surprise, the audit process was incredibly good. They found, I believe, 4 of the 5 bugs that we embedded in there. So kudos to those teams. They did an incredible job, and the state of manual testing is actually pretty darn good, or at least was back then. So we should be employing all of that, but they weren't able to find all of it. They still were not able to find all 5. And then of course they found other issues which we addressed before launch, but we don't know how good these tools are. What we need to do is improve the state of the art when it comes to bug finding, when it comes to locating issues in the code, when it comes to being able to prove statements about the code, being able to say this code base in its totality will guarantee safety and liveness, if you could say that. That's pretty hard to say. Our techniques aren't quite there yet. Program verification hasn't reached that stage yet. Model checking does find a bunch of bugs, cannot tell you that it's 100% complete. So there are a bunch of issues, but we need to be pushing on the science of automated program verification, the science of model checking to be able to find bugs in code. And then I think at the end there is an auditing reward system. That's a great idea. There are many other ideas like this. In many cases, the people who find bugs are actually nice people. If you give them a semi-decent reward and you're a nice person yourself, they tend to come forth and tell you instead of exploiting things. So every single protocol should have a security hotline, should have processes for dealing with bug reports and so forth. And then at the end of the day, if somebody is ill-intentioned, then there isn't much you can do. They can and will steal large amounts of tokens. So I don't know. So there's a lot to be done in this space. The part that I'm most excited about are the scientific techniques for proving safety, for proving liveness, for proving other properties over the code that are relevant. And so I'm excited on that front, and I think that's where we should be pushing overall. Anything else that we as a community can do would be great. Oh, we should also research other mechanisms, decentralized mechanisms for controlling DeFi would be very useful. In particular, we wrote a blog post a long time ago on decentralized escape hatches. So many protocols would benefit from escape hatches. Essentially, if enough people press a red button, it should be possible to intervene in protocols that have opted into a decentralized escape hatch. So if you see a hack in action, you should be able to stop it. And there should be other techniques to limit the amount of money flow, to limit the amount of capital at risk. So we should be employing all of these and more. Some of these are simple and mechanistic, the kind of thing that banks these days do. They limit how much you can transfer in a day, etc., just to limit their risk. Others are more scientific, are a bit more forward-looking, and in combination, I think we can root out a lot more of these hacks before they happen. The Euler hack, which happened on Ethereum last week, is a good reminder that that there are an infinite number of bugs out there, right? So like these bugs come from an infinite supply, and so they're very hard to root out, and we need better mechanisms for rooting them out. Okay, so let's see. If there's some efforts to make it big in the Asian region, what's the perspective for the rest of the world? Are there any future goals to accomplish US or other parts? Okay, that's an interesting question. So maybe I think this was triggered by the announcement that Avalanche Labs recently got to hire two people in Asia for business partnerships. So what's there to say about this? So first of all, I think that bit of news is a bit dated because we hired them a while ago. But second, yes, we have a lot of partners in other countries around the globe, and I'm excited about all that. I have some fun travel coming up as well. I happen to like that region of the world, and since the pandemic, I haven't been to Southeast Asia, and Lord knows I would love to go out and have a nice hot pot and or barbecue or whatever, or sushi or whatnot. But I do want to go out. It's I can't wait actually. So yes, that's happening. There's some plans to build up business partnerships in the Asian region. Part of it is actually just pure demand. We're being pulled in that direction due to people coming up to us and saying, "Hey, I'd like to launch a subnet and I need some help." Are there other? What's the perspective for the rest of the world? Well, so I think I have, at Ava Labs, I have as my mission the following, which is get the word out about Avalanche. We are just head and shoulders above everybody else. You guys have all followed up with what's happening. You have seen other people take subnets and give it a new name. I think there's a asinine team doesn't know what it's doing that calls it supernets, and so there's no shortage of people who take our ideas and tries to rebrand them, and so it's incumbent on me as at Ava Labs that to get the word out about what we stand for, about what our vision is, how it's coherent, and how it's not full of mumbo jumbo, but it's actually a coherent vision for building scalable, infinitely scalable chains without any kind of a fake centralization in a hub, without any kind of forced use of our coin. Just this is the infrastructure. This is the most flexible infrastructure for building solutions that demand a blockchain. So I need to get the word out, and it's not just in the Asia, the Southeast Asia region, but it's also across the globe. And so what am I doing? I'm doing a hell of a lot of things. We recently hired somebody for the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa region. We at Ava Labs. We are redoubling down on our efforts to communicate and get materials, evergreen content, etc., out for people new to crypto and new to DeFi. We are doing a whole lot of reach out to people to educate them. We're talking to just about I can't possibly list everything that we're doing. It just occurs to me that a comprehensive list would be impossible right now. So we're doing a hell of a lot of things for the rest of the world. Rest assured that's what Ava Labs has to do for its own selfish purposes, and along the way, that of course propels the Avalanche chain as well. So in the U.S., we have no shortage of great partners. I think some of it has been publicly announced, you guys have heard of AWS. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of Deloitte. You guys have probably heard of some of the other ones that I'm not going to name because I'm not sure which ones are public and which ones are not. But there's no shortage of people that we're working with in the U.S. In general, though, I do have a problem with getting the word out. I think marketing is an area that we could be better at. That's where a lot of our efforts have been going into in the last few months. I think there has been a tangible uptick in the last few months as well as a result. Expect that to increase and get better. So that's what's going on behind the scenes for the U.S. and in other regions of the world. Okay. How difficult can it be to have those people, BTC Maxis, etc., aligned with a different vision regarding the potential of blockchain application in real use cases and TradFi? How difficult can it be? Well, it can be impossible. So these are human beings, and human beings don't like change, right? They especially don't like change if somebody is paying them to oppose change. So if you have received campaign donations from incumbent financial firms, then you're not going to like the crypto space. If for whatever reason you are just generally negatively inclined and you're not technically inclined, it's just going to be very hard for somebody to break through your hard outer shell and say, look, there are actual good uses for this thing. Like, I use DeFi. It's so much easier than my bank by 1.5 miles. And what's it going to take for a certain senator from up north, let's say, to see this? I don't know. I think I just have to corner her and be like, look, here's how it works. It's beautiful. It's not open to malfeasance. Look, I borrowed I don't know what, a flash loan, and I returned it, and it made the world a better place because the prices became more equal across different markets. This kind of thing, it just has to get through to them in bits and pieces, usually through trusted channels. So I think it's a long game. I think we just have to show up and be like, look, we're normal people. It does help to not be a terrible human being. These people are not going to listen to terrible human beings. And and I don't know how to put this gently, and I will just blurt it out. There's a lot of, especially in the early days, there were a lot of abhorrent human beings in the crypto space. And you just look at these people and you're like, look, one day you're going to need a representative. And you guys are acting like such jerks that no one's going to listen to you. So crypto space in the early days just attracted a lot of misfits, a lot of people with issues, a lot of people who were like, F you, I got mine. They have no sense of what it's like to be another person. They're just supremely selfish people. And people with very, very checkered pasts. So you're not going to be able to break through if you're just some kind of a riffraff who was I don't know, who made his Bitcoin off of cam sites, including Romanian women. No matter how many times you swear to me that you checked all of their IDs, you're tainted as a person. So these people, they will have no credibility. They exist in a universe typically full of hatred, by the way, because they cannot break out of that universe into the bigger one. They're stuck in that little bubble. It's just, and they start doing their own things. They must necessarily end up coming up with shibboleths for identifying who is in their universe, who's not. They have those purity tests, etc. And then they go into that spiral, and of course that person's not going to be able to break through to someone and say, hey, crypto is actually a useful thing. Don't, Bitcoin is a good thing, etc. They have difficulty. And that, of course, convinces them that they are special and everybody else is wrong. And then, it just kind of foments that power structure. What we need are people who are decent people, who are relatable, who have decent values, who will reach out the gap, reach over the gap, and be like, look, you on the other side who has not seen crypto yet, let me show you. And it's not just for gambling. It is not just for whatever else, like for buying random stuff on the internet. Those days are long gone. I'm sure you can buy things with crypto today too, but it's actually pretty darn hard. And of the entirety of crypto transactions, there was a very nice study. Even at the worst of it all, even before DeFi came in, the percent of transactions that had to do with gambling and darknet markets was less than 2%. Of all the cash transactions, it's estimated that about 2% is gambling and drugs. So crypto is exactly in the same ballpark. It was in the same ballpark even before the DeFi explosion of 2017. So somebody has to teach, he has to reach across the gap and convince people that these things, these new technologies, are very useful. So I think we need people who are going to stake their reputations, people with decent, credible pasts, who are going to say, look, this is a good thing. I personally put aside my academic career. It's something that many people strive for. I had tenure at Cornell University. I gave that up. That's something that many people would fight tooth and nail for. And so I left it because the promise over here is so much bigger. And we need people like this who are going to be like, look, this thing is so much better than whatever is going on with the banks over there. And compliance here is easier. And whatever goals we might have as a society, we can enforce them with this set of tools better than we could with the old universe. Old universe was based on trust, and trust gets abused all the time. And I don't need to say this to any politician. They know, right? So they know because they're on the giving end of this also quite a few turns. So in any case, so that's sort of the short of it all. But let me end up on one happy positive note. Yes, I will do everything I can to preach the word to the unconverted. Yes, you too should be doing the same thing gently, without being jerks, and gently without coming across as smug as anything else. So that's one thing we need to do. But let's just for a moment assume that worst comes to worst. Let's say that everybody in DC decides crypto is good for nothing. We're going to ban it. Okay, I don't think they can. I think that ship has sailed. It sailed a few years ago. Those people might not realize it. They're 5 years ago people, right? They're boomers who constantly are way behind. So they might not notice this, that they will realize very, very soon, if not already, that trying to do ban-like actions in crypto with the current set of distribution of coins is going to lead to a huge backlash. But let's suppose they did that. Let's suppose everything turned against us. Let's suppose we had to shut down the whole operation across the globe. Okay, so this is what Einstein calls a Gedanken experiment, right? It's just a thought experiment. We're going to suspend all random, all normalcy, all normal thought. We're going to think about an extreme case. So in this extreme universe where there's no Avalanche, no Ethereum, no Bitcoin anymore, it's all done. Then what happens? Well, I posit to you that if I just sit here for about a decade, what does a decade do? In a decade, all of the current Gen Zers turn into 35-year-olds. So let's say a decade and a half. Let's wait. Let's sit on our butts for a decade and a half, and by that time, all of today's Gen Zers are 40-year-olds and around 40 years old, and they're in positions of power, and they have seen what it's like to send an Avalanche coin across the globe. They've seen how fast it is. They know how green it is. And then now you send this person to the bank. What do you think is going to happen? Or you send this person down to deal with any other financial TradFi institution. You put them in charge of a software stack at any company. They will immediately turn around to you and say, what the heck is this stuff? I want a blockchain here. This is demanding a blockchain solution. So even if we do nothing, even in the worst of worst cases, this technology is inescapable because humans are humans, and the technology is as elegant and gorgeous as it is. So rest assured, we don't have to fight so hard in this battle. No matter what we do, the outcome is preordained. Now, what's the fight over then? Well, just like when the file sharing thing happened. Remember when the file sharing thing first came about, and it was much easier to download a song illegally than to buy a CD and rip it and listen to the ripped CD, right? You wanted to buy it legally, but nobody was selling it to you legally. They just didn't have the channels. All the record companies were run by 5 years ago people, and those people had their money flows, and they didn't want to adapt or shift to a new universe. So they just wanted to live on the exact same way they've always lived. They wanted to make these little shiny aluminum things in plastic cases, shrink wrap them, and sell them to you. They were trying to sell you CDs. And so what did they do? They came at us with the RIAA. If those of you who remember the Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA. And RIAA was a deplorable institution. It started suing grandmothers and what little old ladies in Kansas for like downloading songs. And it was really a terrible time. And what did that do? That bought some time. That time needed to be bought. And in that time frame, these 5 years ago people had the time to catch up. It bought about 5 years. And by 2005, streaming came about. 2006, I think streaming came about. And then suddenly you could download from legitimate sources, and people don't go to Pirate Bay anymore. I don't know anybody who does anymore. So that's a similar thing can happen here as well. So these people are trying to get some time, and as a result, they're doing some of these like ban-like activities. They're making annoying noises, etc., etc. And Operation Choke Point, what have you, is happening. Perhaps not. Who knows? But bottom line, the outcome of all of these battles is preordained, and so that gives me great peace inside. We don't need to do all that much to fight it all. This technology will win. Now, in the short term, of course, we might want to hasten the rightful outcome here and make sure that the pain inflicted by those who want to keep us back is kept to a minimum. Okay, so do any of these bank failures directly affect Avalanche AVAX? They do not. The Avalanche Foundation put out a statement saying that They had only 1.6 million affected in SVB. That 1.6 million was released when SVB was not bailed out, or whatever the heck happened to SVB. I don't even know what the word is. It wasn't bailed out, and it did not use taxpayer money. That's what I've been told. I'm going to stick to that. I love politicians who try to brand certain events. It's really fun. I don't know where the money came from, but they found some money that is not taxpayer money, and they gave that money to SVB, but it wasn't a bailout. And so in any case, long story short, that 1.6 has been released. So short answer, none of these bank failures directly affect Avalanche or AVAX. Just does not. The foundation lost not a dime. Ava Labs, which is a separate entity, also is entirely unaffected. So we did work hard behind the scenes to get money out, and we were affected by SVB to some extent, but also that also was fully, to some extent, meaning to a very minor extent. But that was also recovered fully. So at this point, short answer, no, it doesn't affect us. None of this affects us. It's just painful to watch, and the noise that people make around this space is really painful to see. As I said, 5 years ago, people are just really, really hard to deal with, and you just have to be patient with them and say, look, I see where you're coming from. I can see how you might have formed that opinion 5 years ago. It's time to rethink what you're saying. And some dudes download files with .exe and have their MetaMask drained. Is there extra security with Core? That's a good question. Core is look, it's just a rewrite from scratch. It's MetaMask re-envisioned. It's a much better experience than MetaMask. It's just the way it works is much better. The way it supports you is much better. The way it supports your activities across chains is much better. So go take a look. Now, is it fundamentally any different? In some ways, maybe. It's using the best. I know that it's using the best of practices before code is released. So I think that there's a bunch to be said about that. So that's what it is. It's it's okay. There are certain things about the way you interact with services on the chain that have nothing to do with the wallet. So you're going to need to authorize, if you want to go deal with OpenSea, you're going to have to authorize OpenSea to do things to your assets, right? And it doesn't matter if you use MetaMask there, it doesn't matter if you use Core there. And when you go to do that, well, then there's going to be, you will face certain issues, and you can get phished, etc. One of the nice things about Core is that you need leave Core less. So MetaMask is just a wallet. Core is a command center. If you haven't played with it, it's hard for me to explain, but if there was a demo, you'd see the difference. In Core, you can do far more. I can send you an NFT in Core. I cannot do that in MetaMask, and at least not last I checked. And I haven't been using MetaMask for a while now because I use Core. So you just go to Core, and you can, many of the things you would want to do, you do from within Core in the first place. So it's far more secure in that sense. You don't need to go to Jimbo's random site. You don't have to go to the front end site for a dApp, etc., etc. It's already in there. And I'm really excited about that. And we'll soon have the ability for people to skin Core, so you'll be able to add extensions into Core safely. So that's going to be good to see as well. What's the secret to staying so motivated and also so calm and clear-minded? Having a podcast. I'm just calm and clear-minded for the duration of the podcast. And then as soon as this thing's over, I go into crazy good mode. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't consider myself so clear-minded or calm or motivated. Really, it's just a constant struggle. I think anybody who pretends, this is kind of the sort of what they teach you at an Ivy League school. It's sort of part of the American sort of culture, that we all have to, after the fact, make everything look so easy and so natural, etc. And Lord knows I'm tempted to do the same thing, but I'll just level with you and tell you that no, it's just a struggle every day, and some days are better than others. Some days I spend it mostly upset, and some days I spend trying to motivate myself to get up and do the things I need to do, etc., etc. So it's a struggle, and it does help to have a firm grounding. It does help to have your people where you feel safe and happy, with whom you can discuss where you are. It does help to surround oneself with other happy people, smart people, which is what I've tried to do. It does help to have activities that bring you calmness and peace, so you can tackle problems one at a time. And it also does help. I think this is a big differentiator for many people. It does help to have had a bit of a career, at least a short one, where you experienced success, where you actually saw the difference between a job excellently done versus a job kind of done versus a job that was badly done. So if you had a slight bit of a career, you probably experienced projects or outcomes that fell on that continuum somewhere. And when once you've seen this, then you know what to try to attain, what to reach for. And that's usually very, very important. One of the good things that grad school does is actually give you some experience with some of these things. So your advisor is supposed to teach you the quality bar. Like, one of the main things you're supposed to get out is a piece of work done to a PhD level of excellency. And so once you have that, then well, you know what to try to attain, and that kind of helps drive you. It's like, okay, well, I know what I need to do here. We got within this much. We need to force ourselves to do the next thing. And one thing that I found to be very useful when I was starting out was to work in sprints. So I would work my butt off, and then maybe I could push and do another sprint. But then after a few sprints, then I would take some time off, recharge, and then come back. So that has been useful for me. Okay, let's do two more. How do you see Avalanche being adopted by enterprises and governments, and what challenges do you anticipate in that process? Great question. I have mentioned the institutional subnet before. We're working really, really hard to create an institutional subnet for use by an exciting consortium, if you will, by an exciting collection of companies. And in the process, we have spoken to quite a few firms. So how do I see it happen? Well, I see it happen with an institutional subnet. I see it happen in a compliant way. Above all else, people in enterprises and governments want to make decisions for which they cannot be criticized. We can't blame them. Their jobs depend on it. You don't want somebody to say, if you work at a company, you don't want your colleague to come to you and say, hey, yo, I put all the company assets on Jimbo's layer 2. As long as his laptop is up, it's going to be fine. Any day now they will build fraud proofs, and then trust me, they have decentralization. They will have decentralization someday. It works on his laptop now, but tomorrow it'll work on 3 laptops. And hey, they just airdropped a governance token, so now you can, I hold a bunch of tokens, and even though 80% of the tokens are in the hands of insiders, this is a great house. You don't want that. Okay, so nobody in enterprise, everybody knows that that's ridiculous. So what should these people be doing? Well, they have a whole bunch of legal requirements. They need to come up with a solution for building these networks that will stand up to scrutiny. So that's the first step. That is providing to people a system architecture that can service their compliance needs. That's level 1. If you cannot come to the table with that, then you're not at the table. Like, they won't let you in. That's table stakes, right? That's what you got to have a voice. And I'm really proud to be able to say that there are only 3 systems that actually offer that. Avalanche is one of them. So many other systems, they're single chain, and that single chain, there's nothing in it for compliance. It just doesn't work. So it's going to be a hard sell for them to even be at the table. At the tables that I go to, these people, the people who make noise on Twitter, they're not there. Right? They just make noise on Twitter, and they make that noise until their tokens run out. Then they make some other noise. Right? They jump around. We just saw some jumping around recently from some people. So that's the first part. The second part, of course, is finding cases, finding markets where one, there are assets to be traded, there are assets to be tokenized and digitized, and then the third one is again, in those markets, finding services for using those assets in a way that is not well served by existing players. So I can give you examples, but then again, I know that my competitors who take things like subnets and brand them into supernets are listening. So I'm not going to get into too much detail on exactly how we do this, but it's a fairly straightforward process. And if you're in it, you know exactly what to do and where to go. And if you're not in it, it's going to be very opaque, and you're going to have to just wait until we announce something, and then you can change the subs to supers and announce your thing. Do a stunt maybe. So I'm going to stop with that. So what challenges do I anticipate in this process? The biggest challenge is institutional acceptance. And so that's a slow process, but it's not, speed is not zero. It does go forward. And if you talk to people enough, you slowly address every single concern they have, if you can, if your architecture allows it, if you have a flexible enough architecture. So these architectures that force you to have to go through intermediate chains, that force you to have to use unrelated tokens, that force you into any kind of a business process that isn't natural, they're at a disadvantage. So the nice thing about Avalanche is, at the time we were designing the system architecture, I was deathly afraid of having people have reasons to fork the code. As a result, we built the most flexible architecture possible. So if you don't want to use AVAX, you don't have to use AVAX. If you don't, if you want to have two subnets communicate with each other without going through a hub, you should be able to do that. And we support all of those. The systems who don't support those are at a huge disadvantage. So that's one of the biggest challenges I see. That would be the second biggest challenge. The first one, as I said, is human acceptance. That takes time. And at the moment, I think I would say that things slowed down a bunch because of the FTX SBF saga. And so that's, Sam really killed all of us. And he's been a terrible, terrible, terrible actor in the space. He took everything we stood for, put on his boy wonder shtick, and fooled the masses, fooled all of us, and set us back. So he slowed us down, but by no means are we stopped. We're making progress, and Wall Street is making progress. So I'm excited about what's to come. Just today, or maybe yesterday, we had the CEO of BlackRock come on board, and on Twitter in public, he said, tokenization is the biggest use case, and blockchains are the way to do it. I mean, that's something you would hear from me every week. That's now coming from BlackRock CEO. They're the largest whatever it is, asset manager in the world. So the word is getting out. As I said, even if I do nothing in 10, 15 years, we're going to be using blockchains. All these people who are making noise against blockchains and crypto are going to just very quietly be insider trading probably on blockchains because they have inside information on the Senate floor. So it's inescapable, unstoppable. All right, finally, and this is a hard question, and at this point, I do have to apologize a tiny bit. There's this rule that says never apologize, but I think I'll have to break it. What's the update on the roadmap? I did ask you guys to keep me honest. I did tell you that I was going to release a roadmap from Ava Labs as we see it, and on things that Ava Labs is doing, and so I'm in the process of putting that roadmap together. I am later than I would have liked to be. I have had to travel like crazy in the last few months. I just came back from Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Istanbul, Baltimore, back to New York. So I keep traveling a heck of a lot because there's a lot of partnership opportunities and discussions that demand my time. So I'm sorry about this. It's a little late, but but I will make that public. As I mentioned before, I don't like to talk about roadmaps too much, and I don't like communities that are constantly holding out for a future event. So if the system is useful now, you should be using it, and you should be part of that community. And if it's not, then it's not, and it's just someone's dream. And what's being sold to you is a dream, and then suddenly we're in some very dicey territory from an ethical standpoint. So, but from a techie perspective, it's worth talking about where this tech will go and what various people who are comfortable sharing their plans publicly, what they are doing. So to that end, I will provide a roadmap in hopefully very, very soon. I have some more travel coming up, but hopefully before I leave, by the end of this month, we should have a roadmap that explains what we see in the Avalanche universe. By now, if you know how to read between the lines, the progression of the Avalanche vision is very, very different from the progression of, let's say, the layer 2 based Ethereum vision. And you can see which one is going where, right? The Ethereum vision, there still isn't a single chain that has a decentralized sequencer and full fraud proofs. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just kind of lying dead. It's not clear to me that it's feasible. Maybe it is, maybe not. But if somebody says it's feasible, then the onus is on them to prove that it is. So in contrast, the subnet vision works. We have 55 subnets. I was thinking the other day, hey, I should look and see how many of these things there are. There are 55 of them. Some of these subnets were having more transactions per second than Ethereum. So the small chains were more active than other people's main chains. So we're in a very, very good spot on that front. We have many other exciting subnet users coming online. And so there's a lot of exciting things happening. And so I do want to share with you how I see some of the roadmap evolving, how I see some of the technology evolving. And so I'll share that with everyone. And we're also opening up, I think we've already done this, but there might be more to do. We're also opening up our GitHub repositories, and we're doing development out in the open instead of merging into the public repository in batches. People will just merge directly into the public repo immediately. So that allows other people to tag along and do their development as well. So that's always possible, but it becomes easier for other people to do the latter. So on that front, my voice is going. I've been speaking for quite a while now, so I'm going to stop. So thank you for bearing with me. I'm still pretty jostled from all the travel I had to do, as you can probably tell. But it was great. I had a fantastic set of visits with a whole bunch of people who are using Avalanche. And as I mentioned earlier, it was wonderful to talk to people who said things like, oh, at my company, everybody uses Avalanche. That's just because it's fast and so reliable. So that kind of thing, it's like you can't fake it, right? And my competitors whose chains stop once a month, my competitors whose chains don't have any tech whatsoever, they just keep promising things in the future, they should take note. There is a chain out there that actually does work, that actually does amazing things. And I hope I'll see you on there. So thank you very much. Take care.